Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is, what is it, Tuesday? It's Tuesday, September 23rd. This is going to be an epic video in terms of not just about Charlie Kirk, but about all of these types of things that I talk about that have happened over and over again to spiritual movements, godly movements. I'm going to show you a clip of Candace Owens. I'm going to talk about how people get compromised by their friendships and their business interests. How people will turn into the thing that they hate because of financial gain and pressure from people and whatever is expected of them. Right? It's just the whole thing about cult behavior and Stockholm syndrome, all those things. This is kind of going to be an epic video for things I haven't talked about before like this. And this is a good place. This is a good place to start. So I couldn't watch these speeches. I couldn't go through and watch the whole thing. They're just so gross. And I can't watch that Erica Kirk for very long because it's so fake. And the fact that they were eating it up, the people. And I have these comments to get to, things about respecting Christians. There's a comment and things like this. I feel like I have some epic answers for. It's epic. This is going to be an epic. But let's start here.
And Charlie helped us make it that. One of the great people.
Let's go back just a little bit because I want to hear what.
But we did it and we won, and our country is doing unbelievably well now. We had a country that was dead 1 year ago, and now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. And Charlie helped us make it that.
Okay, so that's not true at all. Like, we're fucked. We're like, it's bad. But that's part of the disrespect of Charlie Kirk, right? Like, he has a lot to do with this right here. And this is horrible. Like, what this is right here, beyond to being a president, beyond being a dictator, beyond, all these things. I've said before that it is probably 100% correct. I mean, very likely that Trump is doing God's work. And Trump is making America great again by destroying America the way it is now. He doesn't know that, and it's not what his people think. It's not what he sold people on, and he's not conscious of it because he's a demon. At least that's what he appears to be. But God wants this country taken down because it has to be taken down because we all see it's going in the wrong direction. We all see the idiocracy. We all see that things have gotten worse and worse and worse, and it's accelerating. Ever since, my whole life, this country's gone downhill. I mean, the people have. It's not the country, it's the people. People are not as good as they used to be. And they weren't great. Like, they weren't great when I grew up. And they weren't great before I was born. But people have been degraded, and we see it, especially now with the internet and the kids and the everything. We have complete breakdown, moral breakdown, ethical breakdown, weakness of character. You guys see it. Like, things are getting worse, and we're going in the wrong direction. And a leader could make the people better. And this isn't about politics. This is about culture. This is about lifestyle. This is about, people's orientation to the world. And so there's a degradation. Everyone sees it. The people on the left they see part of it. People on the right, they see part of it. Then some of us see that it's everybody, including ourselves. That we're all worse than we would be. So, if people aren't willing to fix themselves, which people aren't, then there's, only one solution, and that's the system has to come down. If we're going away from God, we're going in a demonic direction. The world is going in a demonic direction. People are. We're going away from God and towards egoism and demonic, willful going against God's will, willfully going against God's will. And so,
One of the great people.
Again, this isn't a political speech, but Trump makes it about him and his accomplishments, his non-accomplishments, right? But that's, and there's a few things to point out here, right?
But through it all, the core of Charlie's message.
I'm also going to be talking about the magic bullet, because there was a magic bullet in the JFK assassination, which was talked about in the movie JFK, and then all these other, it's a part of the whole thing. A bullet that did magical things. And we have another magic bullet with Charlie Kirk we'll get into in a bit.
And his basic method never changed. It never really changed. He stayed the same person also. At every campus event, Charlie asked the people who disagreed with him to come forward, and instead of silencing them, he handed them a microphone and let them speak.
So Trump is literally doing the opposite of that right now. Trump is saying he's going to say something here that's horrific, right? But he's literally doing the opposite of what Charlie does. So if Charlie was supposed to be the spiritual leader, and we're celebrating Charlie's, like, the best of Charlie, not the guy who took his sheckels from Israel. We'll get into that in a moment. The guy who was a Judas to America, like for a foreign country, right? That's what Charlie did. That's the behavior. Taking money from a foreign country to go against your country's best interest, that's being a traitor, right? Like, it's not maybe treasonous in terms of a conviction of being treason, but it's treasonous behavior. Like, he's supposed to be all about America, all about Jesus, but he took shekels, and and that's, we'll get into that in a bit.
And he'd convinced so many of them. It was a pretty amazing thing to watch, actually. Shortly before Charlie arrived on campus, the day he was assassinated, a staff member texted him that there were many critics and students who were opposed to his views, and rather strenuously in the crowd. And that actually made him feel good, because he wanted to convince them. He understood. He really did. He understood what was right, and he was right about that. A lot of it was based on common sense, by the way. Charlie wrote back to the staff member saying, "I'm not here to fight them. I want to know them and love them, and I want to reach them and try and lead them into a great way of life in our country." In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
So here's the thing. Like, he just said he hated half the country. He hates everybody who's against him. Everybody who says he's a piece of shit or knows he's a piece of shit, he hates them, and he's a piece of shit, right? But even if he wasn't, you can't hate the opposition. Like, he's saying that half the country's evil. The same way that Joe Biden and those people said the MAGA Republicans are evil, right? So we've had two presidents, and he's saying it worse than Joe Biden, but they both had the same attitude, that they say they hate half the country. And those of us who know, we know they're both fucked. They're both fucked in the head, right? Let me play my fucked in the head meme, right?
I think you're all fucked in the head.
And let me be clear on this, because I don't care about America. I work for God. Like, whatever I'm doing here that is not about me and my life and my ego and whatever it is. I volunteered to serve God. Like, I've made the commitment in various interactions with divinity. I've opened myself up to, partially committing to working for God. I would say, it could be more, and like I've talked about this in my other, maybe I'll talk about this in another video. Maybe this one, I don't know, but not now. But, I've committed to working for God. Like, I've made that commitment, like a legitimate commitment. And I recognize that I owe, like, that all of us owe, but I owe specifically, a debt to the Sajmarg masters of the Sajmarg meditation, who helps connect me to God and God himself. So there's some debt that has to be paid off. And that it isn't like some, like, I don't even want to call it like a debt, because I want to do it. Like, I want to, I want to give back. Like even before I was conscious of this, I wanted to give back, right? Even before like I became, I started my spiritual journey. I wanted to contribute something. Like I had that, this desire. I want to be a part of it. It's not like it's motivated. It's not like I feel like, I owe you a debt, so fuck, I'll go, it's like it's somebody, I don't want to, I'll go, right, I'll do it, this kind of thing. Like I want to do it. Like I enjoy doing it. And it's not just even joy, because that's not even right. It's a purpose. It's a compulsion to give back, right? So I have that to some extent. So it's to some degree. I know other people have had it more, but most people don't have it at all, right? So, but either way, so there's that. But in terms of America, I'm not a patriot. Like I respect the Constitution. I respect, there's things I love about the American. I mean, this is a beautiful country, beautiful world. I'm a nature lover. I wanted to be like a naturalist when I was a kid. I, enjoy being out in nature, animal life, plant life. I enjoy like walking through the woods. I enjoy being outdoors. All these things, right? To whatever extent. I mean, there's people who love it more, right? But it's something that I have. And there's things about the government I respect. And, when I used to go to Washington, D.C., the good part of America, I used to, feel patriotic about. Like not patriotic, but some love of country. But really, I don't have that like a lot of you do or other people. Like I don't care about it, right? And I'm not somebody who gets stuck in the past and think about how much better it was and make America great again. Like there's none of those things. God has a plan, and our country's going the wrong fucking direction. The people are degrading. Are going in a demonic direction, right? You see it all across the board. And, I'm not here to save it. Like, I don't care. That's not my job. If that's what that's the inevitable outcome of God's plan, which of course it is. That's the only way to reverse this thing. So I'm cool with all of it, right? And I'm, observing it, and I talk about here. I don't get emotional about it. In terms of when I'm covering it here, I don't get fearful about it. I don't dwell on it, right? But what he just said here is he hates half the country, right? And that just can't happen. Like, this is how fucking degraded politics are. And they might hate half the country. Joe Biden was saying it as well. They might hate half the country. But, to come out and say it at a fucking funeral, right? I mean, like, this, listen to like this saying it here.
You need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
And they're laughing at it. It's not funny. Like, he shouldn't say that, right? Because you have to have dialogue. I mean, to whatever extent that Charlie Kirk had something to offer where he was better than Trump, he's having actual dialogue with the opposition. And we've gotten to a point where, if you have a divided country, you have civil war. If you're in a relationship like this, where your reality is so much different than your spouse's reality. I had this happen where where events would happen, things would happen, and we had totally different stories about the event and our interpretation of the event, right? Like the opposite view, like, or just a dramatically different view, right? And so when you get into that kind of situation, I'm like, there's no way that this relationship could work. Like we have a different fabric of reality, right? And when you have that division in your country, you're fucked. Like, you have to be able to work together, right? I was at a gathering with Master Chargy in the meditation that I do. And there's this guy named Salvatore. He used to drive race cars. He was a real rich guy. And he was Italian, and we spent some time together. He was really, interesting person. And there was always infights between, the Indian people were very conservative that did the meditation. So we're talking about 1,000 people or so. at the gathering and whatever in the organization. And there's a lot of boomer hippies, like liberal boomer hippies, right? And so they had very different political views. Master Chargy was very conservative. I mean, much more than conservative Republicans, conservative Christians. He was conservative in a different way. And so there's always these things that would happen, and there's always drama. And this guy Salvatore said, Chargy is the only thing he really dislikes is when, when there's division in the mission, because all the work stops, right? Like all the work becomes about the battle, the feud. And you can see this in your own life. When you're going through a bad divorce or a breakup in a relationship, even with a friendship with family members, you're in some drama situation where you're battling somebody else. All of your energy goes into that, and all the work that you're doing stops. It happens in your family, and it happens on a global level, right? It happens on a small level. When there's infighting, I had a manager when I waited tables, and he said, if one person gets a bad attitude, in a month I'll have to fire the whole staff, because one person will poison everybody's mind towards will talk shit about the management, the restaurant, and everyone will start turning to the negative, right? This is, kind of like a part of Stockholm Syndrome. Like you start focusing on the negative, you could be in a healthy relationship, and one of your friends drops some like insinuations or something and creates doubt in your significant other. And the next thing you know, you're calling divorce lawyers, right? Because you've started to question things. Things can be going really great, and you just start going to a negative side, right? You have to fight against that shit. Like that's just that life is. Like you got to focus on the positive in these things, and you have to realize that you need other people, and you have to work together. And so as soon as there's division like this, you're fucked. And this guy shouldn't be saying it. He can't be saying something like this. But something I covered yesterday, in which both Erica, Kirk, and Trump are talking about this kid who hasn't been convicted and is only circumstantial evidence. And we know there's all these fucking things which I'll get into in a moment, that make that story like complete horseshit, like this magic bullet, right? And I'll cover that. And TP USA, had come out and gave an official statement, which Candace Owens is going to read, and I'll show you that. That's so fucking ridiculous, right? Trying to, make you believe in this goofy official story. But a president and, this woman, like as a religious person, can't start forgiving this guy when he hasn't even been convicted. And this guy is saying he wants the guy to get the death penalty. So he wants this guy who's been yet to be convicted to get the death penalty. And you can't do shit like that. Like that violates his constitutional rights. And everyone's going to be prejudiced against him, everybody in the jury, because they've been told he's guilty already. And it's your job to make sure he gets put to death, right? Like that's how this is being presented. And so you can't do shit like that. That's how degraded we are. And Trump does it every day in different form. So he's at this fucking funeral or this memorial. The other thing is, when somebody dies, there should be, especially somebody and somebody who's influential. So if he really respected Charlie Kirk's death would affect him. And he maybe moved to change, maybe moved to be more, open to making deals with the Democrats. Or just, like back off the hateful rhetoric for a fucking couple of weeks, right? But he's at the memorial already talking about this shit. How Charlie got it wrong, right? So, as much of a shill as Charlie was, he shilled for a guy who's even worse. Charlie was instrumental in this motherfucker standing in front of you. And so, like, that's how fucked we are right now. Like, and people just have accepted it because it's just, there's nothing left there's no integrity. There's no free press and journalism and things like this. And this is how bad this is. This guy's doing this as a fucking funeral, right? Let's see what else he says here.
Charlie's angry. Look at that. He's angry at me now.
So, think about that, right?
He wasn't interested in demonizing anyone. He was interested in persuading everyone to The ideas and principles he believed were good, right, and true.
And he's full of shit there, too. Right? So, I mean, he's like basically telling all these people Charlie's full of shit, and they're laughing about it.
Before each appearance, he prayed these words: God used me for your will. Always said the same thing.
And so then he'd go shill for Israel. Then he'd go take his sheckels and shill for Israel, right?
Use me for your will.
Woo!
And that is exactly what God did.
You know, we should be all doing that, right? Like, they're making that sound like that's some crazy good thing. And wow, what a great man for actually giving up part of his life for God, right? What a great man. He's actually saying, God, please, you know, like I've said before, you can survive 30 days without food. And you can survive 3-4 days without water. Maybe more, I don't know. And you can survive 10-15 minutes without breathing, you know, top end. And, you know, food is gross. Water is more subtle. Air, oxygen is more subtle than that, right? So you need these things. You need gross food, and you can survive, you know, the grossest, which is food. You can survive longer without it. Water, which is more subtle than food, right? Water is, you think about, you know, food being more complex and these things. Water is more subtle. And then, of course, oxygen, even more subtle than that, right? And, you know, you have a strong appetite for food, right? And you can get really thirsty, which is less, you know, it's not as, I mean, we get really thirsty, yeah, it's, you know, towards the end. But your breathing is automatic. Like, breathing doesn't come with pleasure. Like, it's pleasurable to eat food. It's pleasurable to drink water, and then, you know, juice or whatever it is you'd like to drink. It's a pleasurable experience. It's physically pleasurable. And you have taste buds and things and, you know, biological urges. But breathing air is automatic. You don't have to think about it. The only time you realize it is like if you've ever been stuck under the ocean in the water and you're gasping for a breath and you're trying to get to the surface before you inhale water and you burst out of the water and you breathe in, it feels great, right? Like it's, you know, life-saving. There's not really a physical pleasure like you have with other things, right? Like you have physical cravings for food and sex and these things, right? You have these biological urges and need for things. And, you know, for oxygen, it's not really the same. And like I said, it's automatic. But God's love is, you can't survive a second without God's love, right? So 30 days without food, you know, 5 days without water, whatever it is, 10-15 minutes without breathing, but there's no amount of time you can survive without God's love. Your soul, which animates your body, your physical body, needs God's love. You need this energy, and everything in creation needs it. And so it's the most subtle. And so you want to pat on the fucking back for saying, hey, this divine energy that keeps me going, I'll spend a little bit of my time working for you. And of course, Charlie wasn't sincere because the guy's receiving sheckels for going out there and, you know, intellectually bullying college students to go against their, you know, their rightful feeling about our country supporting and, you know, making a genocide happen with Israel to the Palestinian people, amongst other things that Israel was doing. Charlie was, you know, saying that above all, you honor Israel no matter fucking what. Because it says it in the fucking shitty Old Testament book, right? So that's what a piece of shit Charlie was. And so there are people all over the world that say, God, I want to serve you. Legitimately and sincerely. Like people do this all the time. I do it, other people do it. And we do it to whatever extent, right? Whatever level we can get up to, right? Like in the Sajmark system of meditation, you know, I was made a preceptor. And I was, you know, really enthusiastic about it. And there's these books, these preceptor books, and there's these, you know, the seminar that Charji, you know, talked about. Being a preceptor, you give people sittings where someone comes to your house and, you know, they sit in front of you and you transmit to them and you can get an idea of their internal world. And you see what needs to be removed and you remove it, you know, well, maybe over a course of maybe years it might take for some of the things to be completely removed, these some scars, impressions that are blocking someone's connection to divinity within them. And then you allow this divine energy, God's love, to transmit through you. You act as a conduit, right? Everyone inside Marg is supposed to be a conduit for God's love in various ways. Like there's a prayer we do at 9 o'clock, these various things, right? And I'm really into it. Like I can't wait to find out, all this. So the first book had all the techniques, like the meditative techniques, and cleaning, and all these things. And I was like, yeah, I used to listen to these tapes. I used to have a 2-hour commute from Albuquerque to Los Alamos, and then I worked in this, like, I had a counseling degree, then I had a human service degree, but I was working in this, like, this sort of activity center that was like kind of like a counseling center, but like almost like a subtle one. And at first I had to drive from Albuquerque to Los Alamos, and that was a 2-hour drive either way. So I had to commute 4 hours. And then I moved closer to Santa Fe, and I had to commute an hour. And I used to listen to these tapes over and over again about the techniques. But then there was a third book about there was these 3 books. One was was called What is Sage Marg? And then these 2 things only preceptors could get, right? And this third book was about your character and who you had to be as a person. And I realized with the Sage Marg system, the ultimate goal, like if you become a master of the system, if you have mastered yourself, you no longer indulge, you don't let your mind wander, and you don't do anything that isn't God's work, right? So where he's saying, Charlie used to, temporarily dabble in saying, hey, God, please use me for your will, which is good. I'm not saying that's the right thing. So something like that, whatever. But, you can't say he's sincere about this because of the Israel thing, right? Like, there is destruction that needs to happen. And Israel and Palestine are like a catalyst to that destruction. So I guess in a way that's God's will, but not in terms of Charlie speaking to these people, these kids, and he's supposed to be bringing them truth. And he isn't bringing them truth because he's receiving sheckels, which, again, I want to cover that specifically more in depth later, what that means. But this idea, okay, God, I want to contribute, right? But the Sage Marg system, the masters of the system, give up any ability to choose the wrong thing and to do anything that isn't God's will. So, like letting your mind wander and just like think thoughts that are not of God, that are not about serving God. It's every second of your life serving God. Like right now, whatever I'm doing, going to eat breakfast, my whole day, everything's about serving God. Everything that I do is about serving God, right? Like, so that's the commitment that at the end of the day is, the goal, right? Like for someone to achieve a real spiritual state, it's 100% commitment. And I applaud anybody who just does a 1% commitment, because most people don't do shit. They unintentionally serve God, but they don't even have that thought, right? So, this is what we're talking about here. It's not something that pats somebody on the back that they fucking said they wanted to serve God, right? Like, because everyone should be doing it. Like, we can't live without God, which that's part of our whole purpose here. It is our purpose here to serve God, like more than anything else. That's our soul's purpose. I mean, that's the only purpose in a way. And so, we have our specific ways of serving God. Whether we like it or not, whether we want to do it or not, that's why we're here. And so, to participate in the collective.
When you think, that's exactly what he did. The more success Charlie had, and he was getting more and more successful, the more dangerous his mission became. On campuses all over the country, his quest for open dialogue was met with menacing hate. There were bomb threats, pulled fire alarms, and countless rage-filled radicals who tried to shout him down. It was nasty.
It was nasty. Pulled fire alarms. It was nasty out there. It's nasty, these hateful people, these liberals. All right, so we get this thing with Trump. I want to move on. Just one more thing here. I haven't heard it.
I used to say, Charlie, this is nasty stuff you're doing. At one event, police had to build barricades to protect students from an angry mob of thugs. Many of these people, by the way, are paid a lot of money to do this. They're agitators. They're paid agitators. Remember that?
And you had, like, when you paid those people to be at when you came down the elevator and announced your presidency, you had your paid shills, like he knows because he had them. And then, of course, his fake assassination attempt. So, this is the first part of this video. All right, we know how degraded it is. The stuff that Trump's doing as president, and I used to love it. Like I used to, because the presidency is a joke. Politics is a joke. And Trump was making it into a joke by not pretending like the rest of those guys do, right? The rest of these politicians pretend that there's something sacred here, that there's something, this is something to be honored, and it's not. And so during Trump's first term, I loved that he was taking down the presidency. But now he's doing something else because he's not acting presidential. He's not, being a president. He's being a dictator. And he's not, his behaviors are the worst of the worst. And, ultimately, yeah, he's doing God's work by taking down America. But, it sucks to watch, right? And it negatively affects all of us on a material level. Spiritually, it's great. Materially, and he's not doing it for spiritual reasons. He's doing it because he just sucks, right? Like he just absolutely sucks. So the other part is this is not how you behave at a funeral, or memorial, right? This is completely politicized. And then Trump says this. Two more things here, then I might get to Candace Owens.
It was Charlie who helped unite MAGA, and you know what MAHA is? That's right, make America healthy again. And tomorrow we're going to have one of the biggest announcements, really medically, I think, in the history of our country. We're going to be doing it with Bobby and Oz. And
Dr. Oz is a total piece of shit who lost to a brain-dead Fetterman, or a brain-impaired Fetterman, right? Who gave the worst. That's how bad Oz is, right? But, look at him. Look at how sad and pathetic he is here. Like, Trump brought him here to, be part of this stupid announcement that's totally not about Charlie, right?
All of the professionals, I think you're going to find it to be amazing. I think we found an answer to autism. How about that? Autism. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking.
So I showed this to my wife, and she goes, I bet it's Tylenol, because she's following this more than I am. And it is Tylenol. So they came out and announced Tylenol yesterday, that Tylenol women taking Tylenol in pregnancy causes autism, which we know it's something else, right? And so does Bobby. And so that's completely fucked, because he's capturing the whole Maha movement. He doesn't, he's got to deal with big pharma. He doesn't want to deal with the real issue with autism and how to prevent it. Why there's an explosion of autism, and how in 1972 there was 10,000, 1 in 10,000 kids would have autism. And now it's like 1 in 30, 1 in 20, whatever it is, right? Depending on where you are and the way that they define it. But, the reason is something else, and it has to do with big pharma. Isn't fucking Tylenol. But, he shouldn't be saying it here. This has nothing to do with Charlie's memorial, right?
In the Oval Office.
And they're applauding him. Oh, yeah, you cured autism.
White House about autism, how it happens, so we won't let it happen anymore, and how to get at least somewhat better when you have it.
Okay, so they've cured it. They've cured autism. Thanks, Charlie. Another miracle from Charlie Kirk. Don't take Tylenol. So I really want to get to the magic bullet and this other stuff, because it's like epic. This is epic. But he did one more thing here.
Can't let it happen to a country. The Department of Justice is also investigating networks of radical left maniacs who fund, organize, fuel, and perpetrate political violence. And we think we know who many of them are. But law enforcement can only be the beginning of our response to Charlie's murder. Over the last 11 days, we have heard stories of commentators, influencers, and others in our society who greeted his assassination with sick approval, excuses, or even jubilation. You've heard that. So have I. Couldn't believe it. Some of the very same people who spent the last 8 years trying to sit in moral judgment of anyone who disagreed with them about politics suddenly started cheering for murder. Incredible. You know the names. They're major losers, by the way.
Major losers. This is a memorial for a guy's death. That's supposed to be about God. His wife just fakely forgave a guy who, a patsy, right? Like, and threw up the devil horns in my last video. I talked about that, right? Like how fucked this thing is. And now he's going after censorship and these people. For some guy who was a shill, like Charlie Kirk is defined by his shilling, right? His sheckling, his getting sheckled.
That will be proven out.
Taking shekels.
In a short period of time. Some of the very people who call you a hater for using the wrong pronoun were filled with glee at the killing of a father with 2 beautiful young children. And the same commentators who this week are screaming fascism over a canceled late-night TV show where the anchor had no talent and no ratings.
Okay, so he's back, and I was going to cover that today, but I'm not. I'll cover it tomorrow, hopefully. Who knows how this all goes. But, he's back because it seems like maybe that's even publicity stunt. Who the fuck knows, right? Doesn't matter. He's going to suck, and as always, because he does suck. But, it shouldn't have happened. And now, like it's, that's whatever that is.
Last week we're implying that Charlie Kirk deserved what happened to him. No side in American politics has a monopoly on disturbed or misguided people. But there's one part of our political community which believes they have a monopoly on truth, goodness, and virtue, and concludes they have also a monopoly.
So that's, I want to move on to this thing, but this rhetoric shouldn't be happening at all. And not here at this thing, right? Like, this is supposed to be a godly man, right? Charlie Kirk was supposed to be a prophet that was pushing for this godly man. And we know that's full of shit. And the lies, the fake assassination attempt and the manipulation that it took to get Trump to be president.
On power, thought, and speech. Well, that's not happening anymore. We've turned that corner very quickly. Tragically, atrocities of this kind, and kind that we saw in Utah, of all places, are the eventual consequence of that kind of thinking. If speech is violence, then some are bound to conclude that violence is justified to stop speech. And we're not going to let that be justified. The tradition of reason and open debate that Charlie practiced is not a pillar of our democracy. In many ways, it's the basis of our entire society.
So we're going to now censor the shit out of that.
It's the right and inheritance of every free American, the greatest legacy of the Enlightenment, and among the most treasured achievements of civilization. We will defend it at all costs, and we will carry forward the torch of liberty that Charles...
And we're going to do that by censorship, right? We're going to do that by oppression. Like, so, like, this is fucked. Like, this is just, dictatorship stuff, he's saying, at a memorial for some dude, that's supposed to be a spiritual person, and Trump just like it's hilarious how he's able to do this, because we don't have a free press anymore, and people are so degraded that this is just accepted. Like, this guy should be kicked to the curb, but he should have been kicked to the curb a long time ago when he said that he could, he's an elitist. Trump is an elitist, and this is all covering up. This is a guy who was on his heels because he was best buddies with Jeffrey Epstein, and he said that Jeffrey Epstein liked young girls, and Trump had done a bunch of things himself, including cheating on all 3 of his wives, sleeping with a porn star, paying playmates, putting them up in apartments, buying those beauty pageants so he could walk into the dressing room of teenage girls and see them, all the stuff that he did, all the stuff that he admitted to, and all the things that he's done that we don't know about. So Trump was like Jeffrey Epstein, said they both loved beautiful women, but Jeffrey Epstein liked him on the young side. And that should have been enough. Grab him by the pussy, that should have been enough. But people on the right and these fake, these Christians who aren't following Christ and all these people, the Charlie Kirk people, it's right in their face, but they won't see it because they're desperate. They want to follow somebody, and they have Trump, they have Charlie Kirk, they have Elon Musk, I don't know who. But and when they see it, when it's right in front of them, they can't see it because they're so desperate. And they're weak. I mean, this is a form of weakness, right? So one of my viewers said this. Just 5 stars. Okay, so let's get into the Candace Owens things here. There's 2 parts of this. Her shilling for Erica Kirk and her kind of turning on Turning Point and the magic bullet.
All right, you guys, happy Monday. Erica Kirk, man, she really is just the moment. The speech that she gave, everybody was just wowed by her. I felt my energy.
Yeah, we were wowed, all right. We were fucking wowed, like, wow. That's pretty fucking fake and superficial and bad acting and icky and inappropriate.
Personally, like last night going into that, I was effectively like soaring in the air above the convention center, like a dragon above, waiting for Erica to just be like, fire. And I was just going to come down and swoop in out of nowhere. All the politicians, all the fake people, everyone was just going to be, in that moment, toast. But she didn't call for war. Erica did not call for war. In fact, she did the exact opposite, which is what was so stunning. It was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It was really unbelievable. It was not believable at all. It was unfucking believable.
Forgiveness that she granted, the strength that it took for her to call for that forgiveness, it's just unmatched, and it really made a difference. And I was being serious when I tweeted that I think it was the most consequential speech in American history. A message.
Holy shit. The most consequential speech in American history. And so this is the first part. And, I don't begrudge her not criticizing Erica Kirk. And I don't begrudge anybody staying silent about something that they're connected to, whatever reasons you have, some loyalty to people, whatever it might be, right? Friendships, things that prevent you from speaking the truth. So some things are complicated and some things could put your life in jeopardy or it could cause you problems that really are unnecessary because I've said this before, other than the spiritual stuff here, none of this stuff is important to me or matters to me, and we're not going to change any of it. So the only thing that I'll consistently talk about, no matter what, is the spiritual stuff. But there's a time and place. Like there's people I wouldn't talk to about, you don't want to appear like a lunatic either. You have to pick your moments. You have to be appropriate with when you say, and you have to consider your audience, right? But in terms of what I do here, the only thing that I'm always going to talk about is the spiritual stuff. And so I don't begrudge people not talking about something, making a business decision, like they say, if like a big 300-pound, 7-foot center is coming down the lane and you could take a charge, you could get in front of the guy, and it's one play and it might be a significant play, but you might probably going to end up in the hospital. And so they say you made a business decision, right? So I don't mind people making business decisions for whatever reason it is. Personal safety, friendships, whatever, drama that's going to cause that you don't say something. But saying something like this, now she's going to turn on Turning Point a little bit here, at least insinuate some things. But she worked for Turning Point and she was friends with Charlie. And she, again, when you do what she and Tucker Carlson did, and you shill for President Trump, and he turns out to be a piece of shit pedophile, and she knows it now. I don't know. I think she probably knew it before, but she definitely knows Trump is connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and she's not really willing to talk about it. She doesn't want to turn on Trump, and fine, whatever it is. But then you just become a person not worth listening to, which she was already. So because she's a right wing person, but not talking about how Erica Kirk was embarrassing herself and everybody else is one thing, but then saying it was the most consequential speech in American history. That's why I said it again.
It took for her to call for that forgiveness. It's just unmatched, and it really made a difference. And I was being serious when I tweeted that I think it was the most consequential speech in American history. A message that
She even has to say she's being serious. Why would you have to explain that you were being serious, right?
everyone needed to hear, including myself, a message of complete submission to Christ. And by the way, later on, we're also going to discuss another kind of submission to Christ, which is submitting yourself to truth.
Which clearly that wasn't. So with, it's in terms of these dynamics, and it's something that I don't have. See, when you have relationships and friendships and you're connected to organizations and you shilled for people like Trump and you've said things and you didn't say things like about the fake assassination attempt, and then you end up having to create more lies and deceptions or have to, weasel your way out of things or deny things that you said or didn't say. And, when you don't tell the truth, right? And that's the problem with these right-wing fucks or the left-wing fucks, and the people that have, skin in the game, which luckily I don't have. Like, I don't have friends. Like, I don't have associates. And I was able to do this to the one organization I cared about, which is Saj Marg. In terms of, the current master of the system, I was able to speak truth, even though it was painful for me, where I did have connections, where I did know the person, where I did have relationships, right? And I was able to say it. So, that's why I'm going to read some of these comments afterwards to get into this more, my own personal things, things that I've been able to do that were painful, that weren't, easy. But it's still easier for me than maybe most people because, I don't want these relationships the way other people do. In fact, I want to push people away. So it's, I don't want to compare myself. Like, I don't want to judge people based on something that's easy for me, right? But the problem is here with Erica Kirk. It's like this high school girl. There was a movie with Robin Williams. Forget the name of it. Bobcat Goldthwait, was that his name? Directed it. And it was about his miserable son, an obnoxious, horrible kid that everybody hated. And he was, pleasuring himself and hanging, and strangling himself, like as an act of sexual gratification. His son was, the high school kid. And he ended up somehow, he hung himself, right? And so it wasn't really even a suicide. And everybody at the school hated him. All these popular girls, all these people came out, and they were having these, imaginary vigil for him. And this is what reminds me of that with Charlie Kirk here. That, these people were claiming that this kid was great. And Robin Williams wrote a fake message from him, a suicide note, that started a movement, right? So it was a whole kind of thing. It was a kind of interesting movie. And then Robin Williams hung himself the same way, right? So that was like all connected. But you have these girls in high school, these beauty contestants who come up in this very superficial way and pretend to care about people they don't, and cry inappropriately, and they're clearly acting. But nobody, because of their social, implications, wants to call them out on their bullshit, right? Nobody in this circle, and so she's getting a standing ovation. There's a lot of these people at church, they. Southern people, and they say, bless your heart, and it really means fuck you. There's a great movie I talked about. I forget the name of that movie, but it's, whatever. Well, that's not important right now. If I remember it later, I'll bring it up. But, this guy goes down. He's a New York guy, a liberal New York guy, and he goes down to Texas, and this girl that he was, that he was seeing, it kind of had seen, but really, it was a whole thing with her and his family. And she had said that, when someone says bless their heart, it means fuck you, right? And these people who, you're just as sweet as you can be, like this kind of thing, where they all pretend to, oh, wasn't that a great speech? And then, oh my God, behind closed doors, they're like, well, that was fucked, right? And so I would imagine that's what a lot of people are like. They don't want to come out publicly and say, but some of them bought into it. It was sincere. They were crying and shit. And Candace Owens she's got to know, right, that was fucking horrific, right? So that's part one. But just because of these social implications, which again, I'll talk in my own personal situation, which I don't have to deal with that, right? I don't have to deal with any of that shit. I can just say what I have to say here. And also, when things go out to millions of people, there's more, she's going to have to deal with it, right? So she can't say things about Erica Kirk and, who maybe she actually thinks she rocked it, I don't know. But it's real self-deception because that was horrible. Erica Kirk was so bad, right? It was just, it was an abomination.
Kash Patel has now come out and issued a statement fully capitulating to the public insistence that they're lying to us. They are so clearly lying to us about what happened on the day that Charlie Kirk lost his life. Nothing they've told us thus far makes any sense, and somehow it's only getting worse. So welcome back. Let's jump right into this.
Here's the Kash Patel thing. I had to record that thing twice, what you just saw. And the second time, I think it was better, so it's okay. My microphone ran out of batteries, and very rarely that happens because there's a button to push on the microphone for me to check the batteries, right? But, anyways. And so I just want to say, for me personally, I had to deal with something, which I'll cover when we get into the comment, when I answer some comments that are going to tie into this whole thing. But I had to deal with this, with the Sajmark system and this, heartfulness cult that came out of it. And this thing with Kamlesh Patel, right? We're going to get into Kash Patel here. And his, guy I was kind of like friends with who turned out to be a piece of shit. Like he just folded under the moment. And I had to say things, right? And it was, painful for me in different ways. Maybe not as painful as it would be for other people because, again, I'm not a social person. But, it was painful on deeper levels as well. But I was able to do it, right? And so, and I can understand why people don't, and whatever, but, sometimes you just got to, bite the bullet and just say what needs to be said, right? But anyways, this distraction, this Jeffrey Epstein, distraction from the Jeffrey Epstein thing, because Trump was getting pummeled by Jeffrey Epstein. But the problem they have now is that when Trump did the fake assassination attempt, he wasn't killed. So there wasn't all these right-wing Trumpers who are prone to call bullshit on things like that. They were more about why would somebody do, they bought into it. Like they bought into the Trump narrative. So they didn't go after Ketchupgate, all those dumb fuck Trumpers, because they couldn't, because they weren't, that's not how they're programmed. But it's different with Charlie Kirk because he's dead. Or at least that's what they think. And the what happened on stage. And so when there's discrepancies in the official story, and the official story is coming a fucking apart, they have to address it, and they're fucked, right? Because they really can't address it, because Erica Kirk and Trump have already convicted this guy on this memorial service they just had, as has the whole right wing and the media, and there's all this fucking stuff that's ridiculous, right? And so Kash Patel has had to address it, but he can't look into it because he knows that because he's part of the cover-up, he's part of the scam, he's part of the psychological operation here, the false flag thing that's happened. So he can't really investigate these things, but he's got to address them. As director of the FBI, I'm committed to ensuring the investigation into Charlie Kirk's assassination is thorough and exhaustive, pursuing every lead to its conclusion. The full weight of America's law enforcement agencies are actively following the evidence that has emerged, but our efforts extend beyond initial findings. We are examining every facet of this assassination. We are meticulously investigating theories and questions including the location for where the shot was taken, the possibility of accomplices, the text messages, confession, and related conversation Discord chats, the angle of the shot and bullet impact, how the weapon was transported, hand gestures observed as potential signals near Charlie at the time of assassination, and visitors to the alleged shooter's residence in the hours and days leading up to September 10th, 2025. And so these are all so-called conspiracy theories. And he's going to come out and say, Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide. I was full of shit before. But these are right-wing people, and they're people who are Charlie Kirk fans and Turning Point, some of them. Candace Owens, who's supposed to be a pal of his. And these questions aren't going to go away with some bullshit thing like they tried to do with Jeffrey Epstein, where they just, they've now got a second Epstein problem. They got a second bullshit problem. Who are they going to kill now? Are they going to start World War III to get rid of the Charlie Kirk problem they've created for themselves? Like, where does this go? I mean, like, everything's so fucked for them. Okay, so let's go back to Candace Owens here.
I have to say, any woman that can get on stage and meaningfully say that they forgive the person who killed their husband that quickly, you are truly a better person than me, because
Yeah, no. Just stop it, right? Just fucking stop it. It was fake as fuck. And she knows everything that we know. Like, you don't think she's getting the information? I mean, she was mic'd up when she was at her grave with her, when the coffins were coming in. She had photo opportunities. I mean, days after, the whole speech that happened days after, it was gross, right? And as my wife has pointed out, because she's more into this than I am, where are her parents and where are his parents? Where is Charlie Kirk's family? Does he have brothers and sisters? Where is his parents? Why are they not a part of this? Why is there no extended family? There was some kind of thing that somebody leaked that, and I don't know if it's true, that she was involved with some other nonprofit that was accused of sexually abusing kids and things, right? Like supposedly she has adopted some other kid, and that kid's disappeared, and her kids are just props. Like they're not there. That's a memorial they're having for their dad, and these kids aren't a part of it, right? She's up there hugging Trump, but where's her family? She's hugging Asha, Charlie, whatever the vice president's name is, J.D. Vance, Usha Vance is giving her words of inspiration. Where's his family and her family? Why are they not around, right? Just these public figures. I mean, it's like they're CIA creations. Like they didn't have any existence before this. No family, no anything, right? Like it's fake as fuck. And, now it's just obviously fake as fuck to lots of people. And I'm barely delving into the evidence because I knew that this thing was orchestrated as an operation to change they've really used the shit out of this thing, right? It's a whole movement.
I've just been so angry. And yet she was able to, through tears, and obviously you could tell how difficult that moment was for her.
Yeah. Acting, you mean? Yeah, acting doesn't come natural for her because she sucks at it.
She arrived at forgiveness, and she did it in front of the entire world.
It was amazing. What a fucking moment. What a sincere moment of forgiveness for a guy that everyone knows is a patsy. Yeah, you can forgive another actor of something. It's an actor who's in a show with some other actor, and you forgive that actor. Sure, that's great. That's amazing.
And I think that every single person should watch that speech. Truly, they should watch that speech.
Yeah, it's just so amazing. It's a moment. It's like a beauty queen high school moment.
Watch Tucker Carlson's speech. I don't think even showing you clips of it, I'm going to show you one, could do it justice. You should watch it in its entirety, the emotion, the message of it, and you can obviously see why Charlie fell in love with her.
Okay, you're laying this on thick.
Right, I remember meeting Erica. Charlie and I were in New York for something, one or another, and he was falling for her hard, but he wanted to play it cool. So he's like,
yeah, Charlie.
Like, come meet her at Del Frisco's in New York City. And I came there, and she was just lovely. She was genuinely such a nice person. And I was like, Charlie, just go for it. Just go for it. And he did go for it. And last night, I really do.
Again, she's instrumental. Candace made that fake relationship happen. And she doesn't talk about having exchanges with Erica Kirk. Like, they don't have a relationship, her and Erica. She used to work with Charlie. She used to be a part of Turning Point. And then now she's kind of on the out. So, you know, I mean, this seems like just fake as fuck, right? But she does say something here that's interesting, or that's very telling coming up.
I think that the entire world needed to hear her message. What you took from it, how you could apply it to your life, is up to you. But specifically, the part that she shared that provided me with so much peace, and I needed to hear it truly, was when she explained that Charlie did not suffer, because that, thinking about that is, I really shed so many tears over it, just thinking that he suffered even for a moment. It was my favorite part.
It's almost like when Jesus had to lug a cross around for 3 days. And we don't want Charlie to suffer anything like that. We want an instantaneous, painless death for Charlie.
Speech, so I'm going to play that right now.
One moment, Charlie was doing what he loved, arguing and debating on campus.
Oh, yeah.
Fighting for the gospel.
Fighting for gospel. Fight for that fucking gospel. Nobody fought for that fucking gospel like Charlie Kirk.
And truth.
In truth. He fought for truth and gospel and truth. Not in that order. Truth.
In front of a big crowd. And then he blinked. He blinked.
He just blinked.
And saw his Savior in paradise.
Yeah, okay, so that's speculation. And you know, this idea that it's paradise is a bullshit thing that they sell to you. Because paradise implies pleasure, implies vacation, implies some tropical paradise or some, you know, wonderful place, vacation place with all these amenities, right? You know, utopia. But when you don't have a body, none of those things matter. You can't experience sensual things of your senses, beauty, you know, pleasant sounds with your ears, you know, touch, things that, you know, appeal to your sense of touch, good foods, things that appeal to your sense of taste, right? Am I missing any of these things? Whatever your senses are, if I'm missing any. But paradise is something of your body, right? You experience paradise with your body. And so when you die and your soul goes somewhere, there's none of that. There's no materiality at all. And there's no pleasure. There's no happiness. There's none of those things, right? Only God's love and work. You know, one of the great teachings of the Sajmark system is the reward for work is more work. And so when you do spiritual work, you get a, you know, period of rest. You get a period of, you know, maybe some, I don't want to say congratulatory aspect of success where you recharge and then you start your next mission. And that's the same thing, life in and life out. So if you do a good job, you move forward spiritually, there is some unpacking on a spiritual level of your life on a material level with your soul, and then you move on to the next assignment, doing work for God. It's only because we can choose not to do work for God here on planet Earth, we can go against God's will, that there's some distinction. But on a spiritual level, there's none of that, right? Unless your soul is just completely compromised by its grossness, and then that's another story that, you know, I don't need to get into here, right? So paradise is a bullshit thing. You know, they try to sell you something because you know, like they want to make it sound like you're retiring to something better and all the bad shit on earth disappears, but all the good shit remains. All the good things, and that's not the case, right? Woo. And what she's going to say about the bullet and the leadership here, the toilet paper leadership, the TP USA leadership, which is her, like she's calling the shots now, is going to, you know, it's not going to jive with what she's saying here about Erica
And
Kirk.
all the heavenly mysteries were revealed to him.
They were. All the heavenly mysteries.
I mean, that it's just beautiful, and to really think about that, that he just blinked and then he was with the Lord. And it is just a fact that, and Charlie just loved the Lord.
It's a fact that he loves the Lord. You know, he loved the sheckels. He loved the fucking sheckels too. The sheckels he got for you know, promoting a genocide of people, which has, you know, nothing to do with the Lord, right?
Constantly, like I told you, going through the conversations and how much he would just say, I need to pray about it, I need to pray about it, I need to pray about it, wanting to marry Erica. First thing he said, which I think I showed you guys last week. And Erica's correct. It is important to remember that message of forgiveness that we have within ourselves. And it sometimes feels very hard to do that, but we are called upon to forgive people, to forgive our enemies, even in moments that it seems impossible.
Again, forgiveness is not the right way to think about this. The reason that you get over things is gratitude, because you believe they come from God. Like, this is coming from God. Even this fake fucking thing is coming from God. Even this fake, it's revealing truth to you. It's revealing things that can help people reconcile their bullshit problems with the fact that their system is compromised, that their religion is completely compromised, that their politics are completely compromised. This is a moment of truth that's available to people. Like, the people who are up there giving Erica Kirk a standing ovation. The truth as we can see it is so much better. I mean, so much, actually closer to the truth than what they're experiencing. The people who lapped up Erica's speech and Trump's speech and, believe all this stuff, I mean, would you like to be them? And so, shitty things that are told to you that happen, truth that's hard to accept, and painful as it is, it's getting rid of a layer of mental illness and imagination and delusion, negative imagination that you have. And it stings because it's, because you're deluding yourself, right? Because you're in denial, because you've made things up that aren't true, that your lens is warped. And so you can't experience God with a warped lens, with a cluttered heart. And so that's why these things are good. It's not because you forgive people. You accept that these things were blessings. Miseries is divine blessings in the Sajmark system. The two maxims: take miseries as divine blessings for your own good and be thankful. And then Maxim says 7, be not revengeful for the wrongs done by others. Take them with heavenly gifts. Take them with gratitude as heavenly gifts. And so the reason you do that is because that's true. It's not because those people purposely did something to help you. They did it because they suck, right? Or they, whatever it is, or it's, whatever reasoning that they had to do it. It benefits you spiritually because it gets you closer to God. It helps remove a layer of grossness, something that's preventing your move forward. So that's a totally different way of looking at it, right? You're not forgiving somebody for their part in something. You're being grateful that what they've done has benefited you. That things that people have done that are negative towards you have benefited you in ways that things that people who are nice to you maybe don't, right? Because they're not helping you get rid of negative things because they've given you unconditional positive regard, right? So that's the reason.
Possible or extraordinary to do so. But it is also important, it's not really a but I want to assert that it is also important to remember that what Christ is, as I said at the top of this show, is truth, right? Christ is truth.
Well, we're going to let that go for now.
And we are not getting the truth right now of what happened to Charlie Kirk on 9/10. And to be very clear, I am going to need it. I demand it. In fact, I'm now currently working on a minute-by-minute timeline.
You're not going to get the truth on this thing. We'll see what we get. But, what is her role? Is she a CIA shill? What is she saying here? Like, in terms of what she really is? Because she backed the Trump assassination attempt when she clearly knew that she was presenting evidence that Trump was compromised on the Jeffrey Epstein thing. And she refused to go there. Still calling him, still having a relationship with him, still wanting to be in his good graces. Tucker Carlson, these people, right? And so they say they want truth, but, it's one thing not to say something. It's another to, especially, she owes a responsibility to her audience. But it's another thing to consistently show up for people when you clearly know more than you're saying. You clearly know the opposite is true, right? But she does say some things that are kind of interesting here, or she does reveal something that's, worth considering. But again, why does this why did they make such a mess of the crime scene? Why are all these suspicious things, all the things that Kash Patel listed and all the other things that people are looking into? Why did that happen? Why was it so sloppy? Why is there a counter narrative? You know, why? Because that has to be for a reason. You want to say that they just suck and they're incompetent? Sure, okay, that might be true. That this is happening against their will, or is it? Is this part of it, right? That's why I always say about these things, you don't know what's real because, no one's ever going to tell you the truth and everyone's fucking lying. And are lying liars, and maybe even the worst kind of liar, they are lying to themselves, right? So who the fuck knows? But let's go forward here.
I will have for you guys later this week of what exactly happened in the seconds and minutes following Charlie getting shot. I need to know. I need to follow bodies. I've already been able to, as I asked over the weekend, locate George Zinn in the crowd. It seems a bit suspicious to me how far he was, and then suddenly they take him through a pathway. I mean, that's him right there. Thank you
47.
to the person that sent this picture. But then I find him on video, and I'm trying to understand how he made it down the pathway and was taken through to the same area that they had just taken Charlie in the car. I have a lot of questions, and each and every one of them will be answered by the end of this investigation. And I also want to put it to you this way. So much more has come to light that I have not yet presented. I am working with other journalists, different aspects, asking them, hey, you look into this, I'm going to look into that.
We're a team. We're like a partner team.
And the first thing that I think I should make abundantly clear is I am relieved that Erica Kirk is at the head of Turning Point USA. Because just like I alluded to last week, and which I will double down on now, I believe that people within that company betrayed Charlie. Okay? That's just what I believe right now. And I want to make sure that I...
So she's saying this. She thinks that people at Turning Point USA have betrayed him. And so if Erica Kirk is not going to come out and say that, then she's one of them. Right? If she, she doesn't want the truth about Charlie, all the acting she's doing, all the performing she's doing, all the stuff that she's doing. And again, she's off here because this is he's part of it. Charlie Kirk is fucking part of it because he shilled for Israel, which she has talked about. She didn't say he shilled for Israel, but she was happy that he was cutting ties, and she shilled for Israel because she was working for Turning Point when they were getting money from Israel, and she didn't have a problem with it. But then she started talking about the genocide, and then she was on the outs, because of being, Israel pushed her out of Turning Point. Because the money that, again, she had association with it. Charlie didn't get rid of her because he still posted videos from her. And she appeared in some of the events, but she was on the outs, right? And so, they're all fucking, they're all part of this thing, right? They all participated in the deception of these people.
Have these facts entirely on my side before I tell you guys more. I will say, if you are a rat on a ship, you should probably flee now. I recommend it. Anyways, you guys, on Friday, we did...
Again, you're saying that these people are going to be held accountable because you make a video and say something about them. And so,
episode. I want to be clear, I didn't think that episode was going to have the reaction that it did, but I am grateful. We were unpacking the footage that was going viral of the guy that was taking down the camera, which was directly behind Charlie's head, a mere approximate 4 minutes after Charlie was...
So she had a conversation with this guy, and he sent her the footage. People are saying this was a holograph, that this was produced in a holograph, because this is what's going to happen. I'm not saying that's not true. I don't fucking know, and no one's going to know. What I do know is that Trump was in the crosshairs of Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Like he was, he was going to be badly damaged with his base. I don't know what would come of that, but they clearly were freaked out by it. And these paranoid people, people who are thwarting the will of God, want to control everything. So when things are out of their control, they fucking lose their shit, right? So that's part one. So Trump immediately benefited, and now he's on the attack, and the memorial, he's got that martyr shit behind him, and Charlie Kirk, backed him. So, people think of Jesus being with Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk being with Trump, right? This whole thing. So, and being with Israel, the people who link all these things together. The other winner, Israel, because Charlie Kirk was starting to openly question and talk about being threatened, talk about how they were calling him anti-Semitic. and that was going to turn his followers against Israel, and then ultimately, who knows what would have happened with the Epstein thing. If Epstein was linked to Mossad, I mean, Israel could have been cut off completely from America, the right wing going ballistic, Trump not being able to do shit about it because he's compromised on Epstein. I mean, that shit could have got reals if that all played out. So the big winners, Operation Charlie Kirk, Trump, and Israel. I've said this over and over again. And, of course, now his wife, who has been elevated to celebrity status, the wife of a martyred wife, these things. So, Turning Point, a huge winner. Turning Point is now, tripled in size or more or whatever. They're growing and all these things. So, whoever wins, benefits from the operation, which seems to be a CIA operation based in people who aren't even maybe real. And I don't have the data. These are things my wife's telling me I'm not looking into. I don't give a shit, right? But I know that this thing's fucked, and it's being done purposefully. It's controlled, and it's manipulative. And you guys know, like most of you guys know.
Shot. Everybody thought that it was very suspicious. I recognized the individual and reached out, had a conversation, saw the footage, and made the promise that I was not going to share it. Although I said to you, I encouraged them to share it. I believe that the reason everybody is a conspiracy theorist is because people don't share truth, right? Once you...
Yeah, like when you covered up for Trump's fake assassination attempt. This is what I'm saying. It's very hard to speak the truth about everything. It's easy to speak the truth about your enemies. It's easy to speak the truth about, the people that your group is against. It's harder to, say things that are particularly to you. And I've done that, and I'll talk about that in a bit, what I went through and, what it means. But it's ultimately liberating because the things that are personal to you, it's easy to talk shit about liberals and Democrats. That's easy. That doesn't have, you have no skin in the game. But then when you talk about Trump, or you talk about this stuff with Charlie Kirk and the rest of it, and you name them for what they are. Trump is an elitist, and Charlie Kirk is a Judas. I'll get into that in the, why he's a Judas.
Share everything. There's no room for conspiracy. And when I was sharing what I saw, I was doing so because I was just thinking that, this could help. This can obviously remove people from their conspiracies. And
yeah, that's not going to help. Is that why you were doing it? You were doing it because you were hoping that you would dispel these. You were trying to fact check this and dispel these conspiracies. Come on, fuck you, right? That's what you do. You were searching through this thing because you wanted to make it a nothing story. You didn't want this to be explosive. You didn't want to do some kind of deep digging and get credit for it. That's why you looked into Macron's wife being a dude. Is that why you do it? Because you want to dispel, you're actually fact checking these things?
And then it kind of occurred to me that what I shared was a bigger deal than I had imagined by saying that I didn't see any blood. And that is a fact. I did not see any blood. In fact, the only blood that I did see at all, I'm talking about blood on the back, was on Charlie's hand, on Charlie's left hand, which, as many people have been saying, means that the blood moved forward. We don't need to get into all...
Meaning that it was an exit wound. But, is it real blood? Is this another ketchup? Is this Ketchup Gate 2.0, right? Because that's, very plausible.
Of the gore. But what I didn't expect thereafter was for the Turning Point USA spokesperson, Andrew Colvett, to issue this statement as people were asking questions like, hey, how is that possible? How was there nothing in the back? So
this is important. This is the part that I want to show you. And this is the part that I want to jump into my voiceover and answer some of these comments and weave this into, something beyond what she's capable of saying here, right? And we'll show you this in a second. But this is a guy that I covered. I think it was the guy sitting next to Tucker Carlson. And so he has to address, and they already addressed this with Tucker Carlson, he's calling them conspiracy theories, like, oh, fuck you guys for asking questions about suspicious shit that we did, right? How dare you people who come to us because we are marketing ourselves as being godly people in a godly organization. And then when our people do shady shit on stage, and there's all these fucking, the magic bullet. This is the magic bullet part. And it's hilarious what he says about the magic bullet. It's what Fox News said. And so let's get into it here.
Is the gun that was used. Andrew Colvett tweeted this over the weekend. I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie. I'm usually not interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize that this is somewhat graphic. But in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle. And
Okay, so they have a miracle defense, right? So they know that their people who love Charlie Kirk, or Turning Point people who are right-wing people, are like not going to believe the official story. And they want to make it bigger, maybe more left-wing people. They want to make it bigger than it is, right? You know, they don't want it to end up being put on Trump or maybe Netanyahu, but maybe they do. Maybe they think it has something to do with Israel, like Candace Owens wants. They want it to be clean, where Charlie Kirk is still ennobled and enshrined as a saint. But they were asking, they want truth. They're not going to settle for this kind of shit. And to those people who are looking at Charlie Kirk as a martyr when he wasn't, the official story, he was not killed for his belief in Christ. And the people who have benefited from him, I mean, the Pharisee, Israel is the Pharisee. Maybe he was killed by the Pharisee, but that's not because of his Christianness. It was because of his turning on Israel. He was killed by Trump as a distraction. Whatever their multi-agency Mossad and CIA operation. Charlie Kirk himself was a creation of the CIA, like Barack Obama, and not a real person. And so he was just, they did some fake blood shit and whatever, some ketchup stuff, whatever it is, right? But he's saying that this thing is a miracle, right? That's the best part. Like, this is like, that's what you're going to have to do. It's like fucking invoke divinity.
Most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize that this is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle.
Probably probably.
No. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet, quote, absolutely should have gone through, which is very, very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc., end quote.
Okay, so so Charlie, and this would have penetrated steel. So they're trying to say that Charlie's body, he had the superhuman body. She's going to go on here, but he had a superhuman body, the strength of two moose. But somehow his body wasn't strong enough to block the bullet or survive the bullet. But it was able to prevent the bullet from hitting other people because he has moose strength, the strength of two mooses inside his body. Beyond steel. A couple of elk. This thing could have went through two elk, but only half of a Charlie.
And then, now this is Andrew. But it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it. I mentioned to his doctor that there were dozens of staff, students, and special guests standing directly behind Charlie on the other side of the tent, and he replied, it was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed.
Boy, that Charlie.
His bone, referring to Charlie, was so healthy, and the density was so impressive that he's like the man of steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him, too.
Boom, he's like the man of steel. I mean, he's like Jesus, but Superman too. He's like super Jesus. He's like Jesus, but he could prevent bullets from going through his body, not going into his body, but leaving his body. And so that's the bullshit they're laying out here for this piece of shit shill, possibly CIA created person who is who's Judas. And I want to explain this. It's easier for me to go through the Judas stuff when I switch over to voiceover. So when I get through all this stuff and cover who he is, but this is how they're fucking marketing this thing. It's a miracle. It's fucked. And even Candace Owens has to call bullshit on this, as much as she slathered all over Erica Kirk. This one.
In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Remarkable and miraculous.
Fuck. That's what they're... So, like, they have to address this shit, and they're using the miracle defense, which, of course, Trump said that his thing was a miracle, right? That he turned his head, it was miraculous, it just hit his ear. So they're implying divinity. When, if there was any divinity, why wouldn't they save Charlie? But they are trying to use him as a martyr, as something, this was some godly situation, but, you know, other people aren't going to be taken down just because Charlie had to be martyred. So he stopped that fucking bullet with his neck, his bones, like where it hit him, like, you know, so where it hit him, I guess the bone would be the collarbone. Like it hit him sort of in the upper chest, neck area. The collarbone is the easiest bone in your body to break. It doesn't have the strength of 2 mooses or 2 elk. It's very easy to break. So if they're saying that that thing hit him, if they're saying he hit him in the spine, because it hit him on the side, you know, where Charlie's like where the blood was coming out, it was to the left side of his neck, so there was no spine there. The only thing could be is maybe his clavicle or up shoulder, but again, you know, would have passed through any of those things, and would have passed through somebody else behind him. It would have went through multiple people. Like who knows where that fucking thing would have stopped. But this doctor said no, he stopped it with his fucking bone strength, his bone density. And even Candace Owens calls bullshit here. There's 20 million views on this thing. This thing has 20 million views.
End statement. Now, first I want to say this because people were attacking Andrew Colbert immediately. I want to say that it is good to remember that this is Andrew Colbert's literal job, okay?
To lie and claim divinity where no divinity exists.
Is a PR agent. He runs a PR company, and his job is to respond to online chatter and online questions. And sometimes it may not even be what you want to say. In fact, it should never actually, if you're going to do your job, be necessarily what you want to say. He also was very close to Charlie. So I would imagine that he's under a tremendous amount of pressure. The company is moving into a different direction. We are still just over a week after Charlie lost his life. And he has to be the messenger. Who is directing that message? We don't know.
Erica Kirk should be the one, right? She should be involved. Like, isn't her thing? Who owns stock of this, right? Israel? Do they still who owns Turning Point USA, right? The CIA, Mossad.
But his job can't be easy at this moment. Okay, if I say to my PR agent, I want you to make this statement. He works for the company. My PR person just has to make a statement, okay? So I think I would like to just respond to what is being said objectively.
Okay, so you could quit your job. Like, claiming that this is a miracle when you know it isn't, that's blasphemy. Claiming divinity when this is clearly not divinity is blasphemy. So he could say, fuck you. I mean, if he has a job, I'm not going to say that shit. I'm going to look like a fucking asshole. And I'm going against my beliefs. He could say that. He could quit his fucking job, right? Like, there's no excuse for what he did there. Like, I don't give a fuck. He's not lying to me. He's lying to his people. He's lying to the dumb fuck Christians who believe in this bullshit. I'm going to get into that because I'm going to get into the whole thing about me saying something like dumb fuck Christians, what I mean by that. Because, you know, there's a comment I want to address. But that's what it is. These people who are oblivious to the truth and are bought into this thing, and they're putting their faith in God into Charlie and this organization and Trump, and they're being betrayed, and they can't, you know, get out from under the massive amount of lies. Those are the people he's betraying, just like Trump's fake assassination attempt, and then, you know, Trump is saying to the people that he is against the elitists, when he is the ultimate elitist and hobnob with Jeffrey Epstein and the other elitists. He's pro-elitist, but he convinced these people that he was going to clean up the swamp and go after the elite. And Charlie Kirk was a Judas. He was receiving receiving sheckels to betray Christ, to betray these, you know, because ultimately he's representing a religious movement and America. He's patriotic, and he's taking money sheckels from another country, Israel, and betraying the truth of his his religion, and he's betraying America and the American kids he's talking to, as we fund a genocide, and all the things that go with that, right? And the other things with Israel. And so that's why he's a Judas. And I'll get into this. I'll explain this more as we get into the voiceover. And so these are the things, right?
Rather than to attack Andrew Colbett's character. That aside, the statement objectively feels to me like the manipulation of a Christian audience, right?
Yeah, so that's what it is. But you can't say that about Erica Kirk. The whole thing's a manipulation. Turning Point's a piece of shit organization that you were part of, and it's a manipulation, and they were always funded by Israel. And so, like, call that out, right? Like, you got to call it all out. Like, she won't do that, and that's her thing, right? That's her being a part of this narrative. And who knows what her role is and who she works for. Because that's, none of these people are... I mean, once you get compromised about Trump's assassination and you back Trump and Trump turns out to be a piece of shit, which many of us already said this is what's going to happen, because we knew what Trump and we had no idea it was going to be as bad as it was. It's worse than we even thought, right? And so...
No, Charlie's audience is Christian. And therefore, what they're selling to us is you should believe. You're a believer, right? As a Christian, you believe in miracles, right? Like, you believe in Christ and the miracles that Jesus performed, right?
Yeah, this is really bad. This is what Turning Point's doing, right? So let's listen to one more thing here then.
Well, then you should just believe this. There's something about that I don't like.
Well, something about it. It's everything. It's blasphemy. It's something about you don't like. You should like none of it, right? That they're betraying, and then this means everything's compromised. Charlie's compromised. You're compromised. Anybody to do with Turning Point is compromised. Tucker Carlson. You guys were already compromised, but there's nothing here that's salvageable, right? When you start claiming bullshit miracles, then you're betraying the memory of Christ, and you in terms of the Christians' belief system, right? So this is what I mean, dumb fuck Christians.
Like that. I don't just, this was a miracle and that should just be the end and no more questions should be asked. Yes, the conservative base is filled with Christians, but also the conservative base is filled with a lot of hunters, okay?
Okay, so let me switch over to voiceover here. Okay, so before that, I saw this thing. It was great. This is about the golf course shooter, the second alleged assassination attempt of Trump, right? And before that, there was a couple commercials. One was for Ozempic. And I've heard this before, and I never thought about it, but they have this song, Oh, 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 Ozempic. And it's based in a song, I don't know who it's from, and I don't care. That was from, I don't know, maybe my college days. And it was, Oh, 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 It's Magic, right? Same tune. The same, they've bought in the song. But what they want you to do is associate Ozempic with magic. There was 2 back-to-back pharmaceutical commercials and then something for these shoes. Right? But that's important. Then it goes into this thing with this guy. And then I'm going to get into the voiceover. This is going to tie into it.
In our Law and Justice lead, the man accused of attempting to kill Donald Trump at a Florida golf course last year, resting his case today without testifying in his own defense. CNN's Randy Kay has been following this trial, which is frankly a bit of a bizarre trial. Ryan Ruth doesn't have a defense attorney. He's representing himself. Randy, how did all this play out today?
Well, Erica, we've been waiting with great anticipation to find out whether or not he was going to take the stand in his own defense. And late this afternoon, he told the judge he did not plan to testify. That was quite a loud horn here. The judge asked him, did you have enough time to decide? And his response was a year, because it was 1 year ago that Ryan Ruth was arrested. He did call 3 witnesses to the stand. One was a former Marine sniper who testified that he did test fire the SKS rifle that was found at the scene. He said it jammed after only being able to fire once. The prosecution now disputed the capability of that weapon on cross-examination. He also called on 2 friends to testify to his character, but he did veer off topic with each of the 3 witnesses. The judge did her best to try and rein him in before finally just cutting him off on his direct questioning. We had a chance to speak with his daughter, Sarah, outside court. She's been in court every day about her father's decision not to testify. And here's what she told us.
I feel like he really didn't have another choice. After seeing how rigged it is, why would he put himself in that position? You know? That would be stupid. It's obviously all rigged. It's all bullshit.
So, Randy, what happens next at this point?
That's just a great moment. It's all rigged. It's all bullshit. And there's this dramatic pause. Randy, what's next at this point? So, this tells you everything you need to know, because people don't even remember there was a second and maybe a third bullshit assassination attempt at Trump. The second was at Mar-a-Lago, where a guy set up in the bushes with a sniper rifle, and that's this guy. And, everything is so questioned now by some groups of people that they just don't care, right? Like what they did with Jeffrey Epstein. Eventually they just say, fuck you. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide and there's nothing in the files. Because, that's what they'll say with this stuff with the magic bullet. But, there's something, it's going to be a harder sell. But that's where they're at it. They'll acknowledge your theories and then they'll just find a way to call you crazy and dismiss all these things. But here's the voiceover about the stuff with the miracle bullet. Okay, so I want to get into 4 comments here. I think they're all related to this thing that I'm talking about. Let me see if this was, let's start here. Your view on Christianity is pretty messed up. Not everybody is a sinner according to Jesus. That's BS. That's not my view. You're born a sinner. Like, that's literally, there's a term called born a sinner. There was a rapper who made a song and an album called Born a Sinner, right? Based in the biblical teachings. I'm not saying Jesus said that. My whole point when I talk about Christianity is that they've warped Jesus's messages. I'm not disrespecting Jesus. I am saying that they have taken his message and that they have warped it. Like, see, this is how, you just don't have the ability to understand what I'm saying. More often than not, even positive comments I get, oftentimes positive comments I get, people don't get what I mean. And maybe I say things that I don't even understand because of the, being a conduit channeling aspect to it, because it's just flowing through me. So it might mean something to somebody else. And so I just, that's why I don't, it's for you to figure out, right? If you're watching these videos aren't for me. I'm not making these videos so I can watch them, right? And so whatever information passed through me, whatever people get from it, but I didn't say that. Like, that's not what I was saying. I'm not saying you're born a sinner. I'm saying that is the belief of the Christian religion, right? The Christian teachings, certainly in Catholicism, which was the original Christianity. And so that's BS. You have free to choose sin or to choose not to sin. Jesus forgives sinners if you stop sinning and repent. Well, no, he forgives them. He died for their sins. This is what they're saying. I told you what they said. You guys heard what Turning Point was saying about this. This is the video, mounting evidence of a fake evidence of fake in Charlie Kirk operation. Tucker is the big winner. Tucker Carlson also a big winner. So the fake in Charlie Kirk operation, this was about Tucker Carlson's interview with these guys. One of them was this Andrew guy, I think, that Candace Owens quoted from. And, they were saying that only Christians get this because Jesus died for your sins, and you don't even have to be a good person or try it and not be a sinner. You just have to accept Jesus. And that's what John 3:16 says, which they put up in all these places. Now, I'm not saying every Christian buys into this bullshit, or there aren't people who have direct relationship with Christ and other things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the official religious organizations, and I'm talking about what the official teaching is of these various Christian religious, whatever they call those offshoots, right? different churches, different sects of the religion, Protestant, Methodist and Baptist and these things, Brethren. And each of these different sects, the one that there's people up in West Virginia that walk around with poisonous snakes, right? So, there's all these things. People misinterpret Jesus' teachings and his intention. That's my whole point. Anyways, let's get back to it, because that's not what I'm here to talk about. Jesus forgives sinners if you stop sinning and repent. And the person said, repent. I never understood why the Old Testament is part of Christianity, so I'm not your average Christian. So you took this personally, and I'm not talking about you, dumb fuck, right? Like, now you're a dumb fuck for this comment, but not because I was talking about you, because you agree with me. You don't understand what the Old Testament. So that's something that Christians don't get when I talk about, and you get it. But instead of saying, oh, wow, this guy has a point, he sees things, of course it shouldn't be part of Jesus' teaching was not in line with the Old Testament, but they put it in anyway. And that's this artificial relationship with Judaism, Judeo-Christian, right? So, yeah, that's kind of a major point. Like, it's much more accurate if you're agreeing with me, if you agree with me that the Old Testament shouldn't be part of the Bible, then that's a bigger statement about the corruption of Christianity for putting it in. Why the fuck would they do that? And so you start off by saying, your view of Christianity is pretty messed up, but then you agree with one of the biggest things I said. This isn't the comment I want to get to. I want to get to this one, but there's a more profound one. Why the Old Testament is part of the Christianity, so I'm not your average Christian. I also don't like churches, but the best religion, if you want a loving society with violence and almost having no reason to exist, just the wiping money changers, just for whipping money chambers, in parentheses. So this person says that my view of Christianity is pretty messed up, and then they say, but it's the best religion if you want a loving society with violence almost having no reason to exist, but just wiping money changers. It's kind of a crazy person. Like, that last sentence doesn't make sense, but you're saying, listen to this part again, right? I don't like the Old Testament. I'm not your average Christian. Also, I don't like churches. So they don't go to church, but it's the best religion if you want a loving society. Yeah, but you can't even go to church. So never mind politics, never mind everything else. So you're saying it's the best religion, but you can't even go to fucking church? You can't even stomach church, and you're saying it's the best religion for a loving society because there's so much love in the church and from other Christians? No, like you've just said everything that I've said. You don't even fucking know it, right? I hope this is like a goof comment, because you're saying it's the best if you want a loving society. So there's that, right? You're just confirming everything I said. You don't think of yourself as the average Christian because there's so much bullshit in your religion, right? Which I'll get to about my own thing. I come to your channel when I see the fakery put in front of us. It's important for me if you believe in the Bible is true or not. However, I had it with I find it hard to listen on a regular basis with you are so disrespectful, insulting to people who do. Let me reread. This is the one I want to get to. It's not important to me if you believe in the Bible is true or not. However, I find it hard to listen on a regular basis when you are so disrespectful, insulting to the people who do, who believe in the Bible. So here's the thing, right? Do you guys, any of you guys, especially you right-wing guys and you Trumpers who don't really come here anymore, but if you're a Trumper, you're a Charlie Kirker, you're any of these people, you're a Bible person, you're a Christian. Do you respect the people that voted for Joe Biden? Do you respect the liberals that rearranged reality when this guy was senile as fuck and he was snoozling little girls and sniffing their hair and kissing them and groping them and doing all that shit he did? And he was fucking barely able to function. And these guys ignored what they were seeing in front of us, gaslit us, and all the reporters and shills that were pushing this guy when he was obviously senile. Do you guys respect those people? Do you respect the Democrats? Do you think they should be talked about respectfully? You think that we should give them a pass and just talk about how, like they're great people, or how they made a reasonable decision or a moral decision to vote for Joe Biden, right? So you don't have any respect for them. In fact, most of you or all of you don't care when I slam them, and you don't care anything I say about them. You know how fierce I get, how fucking brutal I get with Joe Biden supporters, right? None of you guys care about. None of you guys who were, most of you guys are gone anyway. But when I was doing it, and Trumpers used to regularly come to my channel, you did not give a shit when I went after Joe Biden or any of these people, any of these celebrities, Alec Baldwin. You think Alec Baldwin, do you have respect for Alec Baldwin and his wife that claims to be from Boston, Spain? Some vortex where Spain exists simultaneously in a suburban area of Boston, where she ended up getting an accent even though her native language is English. By the way, just as a side note, somebody sent me this thing that Corey Feldman and Hilaria Baldwin were Dancing with the Stars. And they sent 2 videos. And this is something I used to cover. I mocked Corey Feldman because, Corey Feldman was trying to capitalize on his alleged sexual abuse and Corey Haim's sexual abuse. That came up in the Charlie Sheen documentary. Absolute fucking mess. And Corey Feldman's like just such an absolute joke, right? And he's just such a clown. And Hilaria Baldwin, the Baldwins, I mercilessly mock them for their bullshit and their hypocrisy. And so I looked at the videos, and as one would predict, Corey Feldman, who tried to do these knockoff dance moves, he's the worst dancer, but he does these knockoff dance moves of Michael Jackson, was horrible at ballroom dancing, but he hammed it up. He grabbed his crotch like Michael Jackson in part of it. And Hilaria Baldwin was actually great because she must have worked at ballroom dancing, which of course she did. And I'm like, I just think I can't do it. Like I used to, I can't do it. I just, I used to cover these people, and maybe I will at some point, especially not now. But, everything evolves. But these people who you dislike and disrespect, you don't have any respect for them, especially the ones who should know better and shill for something like Charlie Kirk's people and are actively lying to their audience. Now, they're not lying to their enemies. Trump wasn't deceiving his enemies when he pretended he was assassinated. Trump is deceiving his loyal followers. And that's something to think about. And I'll get into my own thing in a second here, right? So, I was hesitant to criticize this stuff with the Bible and all these things with Christians. I didn't want to do it. And I also have said in the past that my kids got homeschooled, and Christians had done a great job of making homeschooling legal, and a lot of the materials that my kids used, my ex used with my kids, came from the Christian community. And there was other things that I saw the Christian community benefited me, just like the liberals who brought in health foods, organic foods and things like this, supplements, alternative medicine, like the liberals did that, right? So all you guys who disrespect liberals, they have done these things. All of us who disrespect liberals and Christians, they have done quality things. They have also done some good things that I acknowledge that I have benefited from. And so the disrespect comes from, and again, I don't want to call it disrespect, it's just truth. Like, I don't give a shit. For most of it, they're not lying to me. If I get irritated or sound I get irritated, it's because I get comments from dumb fuck Christians all the time, dumb fuck Republicans, dumb fuck Trumpers. It's like the woman, do you like the woman who, when I was in college, one of my buddies was also in a different college, one of my friends from high school. And some of his buddies from college were like at a rest stop, and some guy was beating the shit out of his wife. And these were 5 big athletes, 4 big athletes, and they go over and they start beating the shit out of the guy. And the woman jumps on one of their backs and starts scratching the guy's face. The bleeding wife, who's getting her ass kicked by her husband. And they're like, fuck this, we're out of here, right? And so, this idea of you hold the hand that holds you down. So Trump has been exposed. You're the jilted wife, the jilted husband. You're being cheated on and cucked and all these things. And Trump has shown you over and over he's an elitist, right? The same thing with Charlie Kirk. As soon as it got exposed that he was taking sheckels, my new nickname for Charlie Kirk is going to be Sheckels, right? Charlie Sheckels Kirk. He took so much money from Israel, they built a building for him, and they owned him. And he took that money with the promise of going to college campuses and shouting down where he had, total advantage of age and skill and editing, because he got to edit the clips the way he wanted to, right? That he was able to, shout down these college kids who are too stupid and, don't have the training to debate him properly in this bullshit prove me wrong thing, and tell them that their protests and the shit they were saying about Israel was completely wrong when it was right. Because the genocide that we are participating in, Israel is a parasitic country that is feeding off American wealth and American power. Not that America's great. We are the evil empire, right? So it's a parasite feeding off the evil empire. And so, he was a Judas to those people, his followers. He was a Judas to America because he's a big pro-American guy. He's more about being a patriot, fake patriot, than he is about being a fake Christian, or a limited Christian, a limited patriot. Because he's betraying his country by taking money from a foreign country that's paying him specifically. Israel was offering people money, some of them truthers, some of the people you might also watch. Some of you guys have watched videos from your truthers who are offered money by Israel to be on their side and shill for them. I showed you, or I talked about that clip from Joe Rogan and the comedian Bobby Lee, a Korean comedian, who was like from 7 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, that he was offered a free trip to Israel. And when he got there, they were telling him he had to tweet and he had to put out social media saying how great Israel was. They paid for everything, but, only if he was a shill. They hire shills. They give you shekels. And, this comparison to Judas, Judas received money. What is it? 20 pieces of gold, 20 pieces of silver, 30 pieces of silver for, shekels. My brother once he had a truther AM radio. He's a little paranoid. My brother had guarded poppy fields, opium poppy fields for this with CIA. There's CIA there. And he wrote a fictional book, which that was part of, right? Of course, that became common knowledge. It wasn't a big bombshell thing it was back when he was talking about it. But he was on AM radio, and he was an old school kind of truther. And there's some people doing a story on him. And he said, enjoy those 30 pieces of silver, right? My brother wasn't a biblical scholar, but he knew about Judas, right? And so Charlie took his 30 silver pieces, his 30 shekels, his 30 million shekels, right, from Israel, and promoted a narrative that betrayed his audience, betrayed the country, betrayed Jesus. He was a Judas. Charlie was a Judas, right? And that organization is a Judas organization that's claiming miracles that didn't exist and covering up for some fake fucking bullshit thing to make Charlie into a martyr, which he wasn't, right? Where Trump, on the other hand, has convinced everyone that he's elitist, like I said earlier. I mean that he's against the elite when he is as elite as anybody. And he is robbing from the poor and giving to the rich. He's in a reverse Robin Hood. And you guys have lapped that shit up. And even though he's best buddies with Jeffrey Epstein and one incriminating thing comes out after another about him, these fake dumb fuck Christians are buying into the Charlie Kirk bullshit, buying into a Bible that has been manipulated. Again, this isn't about Jesus. This is about telling you the truth about how they manipulated Jesus' story. They're not Jesus's, Jesus isn't happy with the religion. I know that, at least from the interactions he had with the second master of the Sage-Mark system, he's literally said that he wanted him to take over Christianity. That this guy Babaji intercommuned with him. And again, you can believe it or not, just like you can believe whether Jesus intercommuned with the disciples, but that's part of your religion. But Babaji went to him and said, I have all these Christians that are coming to me, and do I have your permission to impart spiritual teaching? Because there's just an etiquette in the spiritual world. And Jesus said, yes, I want you to do that, and I want you to take over Christianity. Like he would put him in charge of Christianity, whatever that meant. I mean, not the religions themselves, but the essence of the thing. And so, Jesus is working with this system. He's in charge of one of the spiritual points in the system. So he's a part of the Sage-Mark system. And so my thought is, if you really were into Jesus, you would connect with the system, this meditation that I do, Whether you believe that or not, that's not my problem, right? But that's what I believe. And then I had this dream, which I approached Jesus, and, I was a little bit uncomfortable talking about things that I know. I know things that you guys don't know because of my experience in this field, because you're limited to one thing. You've experienced one thing. You've experienced McDonald's, right? You've experienced American food. You experience, one type of food, where I've eaten from all over all these other foods and like some of the best foods. And I have some of this information just from life experience, where you have one thing, which is Christianity, and you know nothing about any of the other things, right? And you don't even know about your own thing because you've been lied to about Jesus' teaching by the organization that has, and the Bible that you've been given, right? And I don't care. I'm not here to fucking, you're what you do with it is not my problem, right? But I see Jesus. He's sitting down. I go up to him. I said, "Do I have permission?" I have this in a video when I freshly did it, like in one of my old Journey series. This happened, and I said, "Do you have my permission to talk about Christianity?" Because I have Christians that come to my channel, right? And he said, "Yeah. Why do you think I'm sending them to you?" So, in my view, you're being sent here so I can tell you things that Jesus wants you to hear that you're not going to hear it from your people, even if they're good pastors. And I had a pastor that came here, and he knew everything I was saying was true. Like he, wrote comments and things, and he was, having a crisis with his religion because, he knew what he was getting the truth from me that he wasn't getting from his own people, from his own book, from his own, organization. And again, like I don't give a fuck about it, right? And you could say, "Oh, well, don't swear or don't disrespect us," but how can I respect you when you guys elected Trump or you buy into this bullshit that's caused so much pain and suffering? Is my disrespect of you or these people who believe in this somehow worse than the actions that have been taken on behalf of Christianity, the Crusades, all the stuff that's been done, all the religious wars, all the manipulation? The manipulation just, it's disgusting to me. I just can't stand it. How manipulative people are. And, because, at some point I was myself manipulative. Maybe because my parents were both manipulative, whatever. Like I had those tendencies. They weren't natural to me. And at some point I realized, when I became a spiritual person, that if you had to manipulate the outcome of something, you were going against God's will. America doesn't like to say the word surrender, but ultimately you have to, you do what you can do. You do your work. You do whatever you can do, and then you leave the results. And then you leave the results to God. That's one of the great teachings that was specifically said to me by Master Chargy. That's part of the Sagemark teachings. The work is yours, and the results are His. And so, at some point, you just surrender to the results. And when you manipulate the situation, then you're trying to stop something that God wants to happen. Like at some point, you have to let it go. You work as hard as you can to achieve something. And then if the thing fails or it doesn't go the way that you thought it should go, then you say, all right, you bow before God and say, I surrender. Thank you. Thank you for your, for being here for me, whatever it is, whatever way, be grateful for whatever happens, whatever unpleasant thing, and just say, you know more than me. I don't know anything. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and, the results are yours. And so you can look at like I'm being disrespectful because I'm telling you something you can't handle. Like, that's not my fault. You don't have to be here, right? Like, you don't have to be here. If you find value in what I say, it's easier for you to hear what I have to say about Joe Biden than what I have to say about you. And, I had to do this. That's the other thing, right? So in the Sagemark tradition, there was 3 masters. The first 2 masters were both named Ramchandra, right? There's 2 incarnations of Krishna that are part of Hinduism, part of Vishnu, the god, the deity behind preservation, right? And you can say that this is, well, I don't believe in Hinduism, but there's 3 forces at work in your life and the work in not only just the material life, but specifically the material life more than even the spiritual worlds, that in the material world, there is creation. There's also this exists in the etheric world, but, I'm talking about planet Earth and third dimensional reality here. There's creation. Everything has to be created. The earth was created, whatever the creation story you believe from the Bible. Again, that's bullshit, Old Testament stuff, but whatever. You believe whatever. But there is a creation. And then there's a preservation of the creation. You're born, And then you preserve your life. You have to maintain your body. You have to maintain your health. You have to stay away from risky things, right? So you have preservation, and then you have destruction. And there are spiritual entities that are in charge of all these things: creation, preservation, and destruction. And those entities, as they were called in the Hindu religion, were Shiva, the god of destruction, Brahma, the god of creation, and Vishnu, the god of preservation, or you can call them spiritual functionaries. But there has to be a consciousness in all that oversees it, right? Make sure that it's running properly. There always has to be a soul in charge of that stuff. And, this is great stuff for people to be aware of. And this soul that's in charge of preservation incarnated twice in India. Once as this person called Rama, and another one as Krishna. And they're two of the main figures in this. But we're talking about, Rama was some, 50,000 years ago, right? There's no way to know when Rama lived. Krishna was 5,000 years ago. So Krishna was when the first religion. He was before Judaism. They were certainly before Buddhism and before any of these other religions, right? And so and even before him was Rama, and then there was the Vedas and these other things. But Vishnu was incarnated more than twice, but those are the two times that were recently documented. But anyways, there was this guy named Rama. And both the first two masters were named Ramchandra. They lived in northern India, where there isn't a lot of gurus. And the first guy was referred to as Lalaji. And he had a handful of disciples. Like his dad was really rich man, and one of the British Rajas, one of these kings that was backed by Britain. So this is before the British were forced to leave India, right, when they dominated India. And the guy just stole Lalaji's father's land and possessions. Just came and just stole all of it. And his father's kind of died shortly thereafter, like just gave up on life. And Lalaji was penniless. He was like a young guy. He was like 14. He was married when he was 14, so he had a young, bride, and they had no money, no anything. He was educated. He got a job in a courtroom, and he already was a spiritual giant that people didn't know about. And eventually 200 people came to his house, and he imparted spiritual teaching to him. One of them was his successor, Babaji, who was also named Ramchandra, who was named his successor 14 years after Lalaji died. And Lalaji transmitted his essence into Babaji. And Babaji lived this unbelievable life. He's kind of the main figure in this in different ways, spiritually at least. And then he was a person he had like some form of dyslexia. He was a different kind of person. His ability to communicate and deal with things, he wasn't good at material life. And this guy Charji, who was the guy I knew, who was like 6'4", Babaji was like 5'1", used to smoke this hookah and talk. He's like a Yoda type character. Charji was an executive in a corporation. He was highly educated, spoke more than 20 languages, like 29 languages, a little bit of them, various Indian languages. He had traveled throughout the world, and he was just this unbelievable person in terms of his capacity for work and his capacity to be efficient. And there was this time where Babaji transmitted his essence into Charji when they were traveling in 1974 at an airport in Denmark. He was spiritually able to keep his soul, his everything that he had accomplished, and he transmitted it to Charji. And this was supposed to go on for a number of years. And Charji got sick, and he was, he went through his life was in many ways really difficult life. And it was getting, he went into a coma for a while. It didn't look like he was going to have a successor. He appointed some kid to be a successor, younger guy. And he was threatened by other people in the mission, and there's all these things that happened. He wasn't a Brahmin. Charji was a Brahmin, where he was in southern India, where there's a lot of spiritual, religious, educated people. But they didn't accept this young man, and he was threatened. A lot of things happened. The kid turned out to be not such a great choice anyway, so he withdrew. And Charji was getting close to his end of his life, and he nominated this guy named Kamlesh Patel, who's now known as Daji. And I had good experiences with Kamlesh. I had known him for a while. We had good conversations. He's someone who was very dedicated to the system, somebody who gave a whole house he's a rich guy. He owned a bunch of pharmacies. Of course, that's an issue, but I don't want to get into all that stuff. But he turned out to be a total piece of shit, right? So when I was in India with my kids, my goal, my family life's goal, my ex had been an abuse survivor. She had, been sexually abused by her dad and emotionally and physically abused by her mom. Her dad was a very successful man that was in charge of a Fortune 500 company. And she was fucked up because of that. But she was really brilliant in some ways. She was devoted to the system. But she was, broken. Like she had said that to me, that she was broken and she couldn't be fixed. She would flip out. She would have psychological breakdowns. She would get knives and pretend to cut herself or kill herself, threaten to kill herself, tell me that my words made her want to kill herself. I could say mean things. Some of it was justified, but most of it wasn't, because she was just crazy, just broken. But I had hope, like the spiritual system. I thought that she could, she had a good side and a bad side. She had a broken side, and she was very, she was a brilliant person in some ways on the other side. And I always thought the other side was going to work out, but I was lying to myself. And we were planning an intergenerational family farm, and my family fell apart, and my daughter followed in my ex's footsteps of self-abuse, of cutting, threatening suicide. Eventually she committed suicide, so there was all that. There was mental illness that ran in my ex's family. It's a whole fucking thing. I've covered this extensively in the Journey series, but to do a Crib Notes version of it, my ex went off her thyroid medication and spiraled psychologically and physically, went back to America and basically was bad-mouthing me and turning everybody in our organization against me. Not everybody, but whatever it was, right? And I was going through it. My daughter was at risk. My other daughter was sick all the time. My kids, two of them, were dreadfully behind in homeschooling. And I was just going through like a difficult, what we call a cleaning in the system. And this thing came up where I had like an anger or bitterness towards God, a resentment towards God. And it was eventually cleaned out through the system. And I, was a happier person. I started making more serotonin. It was a big relief. So, it was transformative. It elevated me in so many different ways. And my life and who I was as a person in life was just so much better without this thing. And it proved again this efficacy of the system, right? Pulling things out that are unnecessary or counterproductive to your spiritual evolution, and then filling it with transmission. And I, was moved to a different level spiritually. The YouTube channel took off. My kids and I returned from India. Before that, I met with this guy, Daji, and he, part of this, what the master, the preceptors do in the system is read your spiritual condition. And so I went in there to give him some Tulsi seeds, and I had written this book called The Choice. And one of the people that he was working with, a young woman from America, Kamlesh Patel, is known as Daji. And he wasn't yet Charji was still alive, but Charji was, really sick. And he was, this guy Kamlesh was going to be the next guy, the next master of the system. And I came in, and he had seen some of the Tulsi plants I'd grown. Tulsi is a holy basil. It's really important in India. It's an adaptogen. It's a kind of big thing that happens now with people taking it with Tulsi tea and some of these other things. And I had grown some of it at the ashram, and he was impressed by it. And through somebody else asked if he could have some of the seeds I had, right? Some organic Tulsi seeds I had from America. But anyways, I went to see him, and he misread my condition based in, this girl had read that book. She ended up being in the office, and she was really interested in some of these, narratives, truther narratives. And she had obviously talked to him, and he was such a mainstream piece of shit shill that he told her that I must be crazy, right? And so there are these spiritual points. There's the heart region, the mind region, the central region. And the heart region is in the heart area. And in the mind region, where there's a point in your throat that's supposed to be, it's full of emotions and different things that's avoided. you go through your spiritual journey. And the next point is the third eye. So those 2 points, the third eye is a power point, and they're avoided because people in the system don't need an open third eye, and they don't need to get bogged down in these emotional things that are in the point at the base of your throat. And he said that I was stuck in the base of my throat. He didn't say it directly, but he was talking about it in a way that he was indicating that it happened to me because of this book. So he heard some truther narratives that are very consistent with the whispers of the brighter world. But these guys are too weak to dive into those things. And so instead of finding out what I believed, he just made up some bullshit thing that I was in this 0.5, and it was reverse inverted. And when it was inverted, you hallucinate. So he's accusing me of being crazy and hallucinating. And I was like, oh my God, this is fucked, right? Like, this is the next master. This guy's a fucking idiot. Like, I was like, I couldn't believe he was doing this, right? I had seen him be given all the spiritual gifts, and I saw him go through a spiritual evolution. Like, I'd been witness to it. I saw him being prepared to be the next master, and I'm like, this guy's a complete buffoon. And the reason I'm telling you this is, when I went to leave, he said, you can come in here anytime you want. Like, there's, the people want to spend time with the master of the system because it feels good. Like, he radiates this energy. It's like, if you had a chance to spend time with Jesus or Buddha or somebody, but even more so, because the difference in spiritual condition and the transmission and cleaning, it's even a better experience. And everyone wants to be able to just walk in. There's layers of security, and, you just can't go and... Oh, and he said I could come there anytime I want, which is a rare thing, right? But I was like, fuck that, because I'm, if it's like this, like, I didn't want to be around the guy because it's, this... I'm like, is this guy gonna make it, right? So it's, it was my first knowledge that he was going to fail, and over the next couple of years, he failed over and over again. And I went through a whole thing, and the organization had turned on me, and he had kind of turned on me a little bit, whatever it was, not a little bit. People are talking shit about me and saying things that weren't true, and I went through all that stuff, and I didn't want to leave the organization because, it was my thing, right? And, it was like everything to me, and even though I wasn't a social person, and even though I really didn't have close friends in it, it was my support system and all these things. I was going through difficulty with a divorce, and, my ex, like crazy, like all that stuff, and my kids. It was just, all of these things, right? And, there's this moment, we were in Sri Lanka. We used to have to go to Sri Lanka. And the first time we went to Sri Lanka, my daughter was, where we were staying at the ashram, she had a lot of friends. And when we had homeschooled them, they didn't have access to other people as much, they were isolated. And so she wanted to communicate to her friends, and we were not a big fan of social media, but she basically said if we didn't let her on Facebook, she would commit suicide, which is something my ex used to do, use suicide as a way to basically blackmail me, because, what do you say, fuck you, go ahead, do it? It's like a shitty thing to do to people, like that manipulation I dislike. And my daughter was just acting out. And my ex she was running out of her medication. She ended up leaving us and going back to America, which was a fucking unbelievable blessing. But there was this point where, we were out of money. My mom had died, and I was getting some inheritance from her. And I got the check, and I was in Sri Lanka, and I needed to go to a bank and get money for it. And it was raining, it was late. And I got into one of these tuk-tuks, these like auto rickshaws. And for whatever reason, I think these guys thought I looked like Vin Diesel or something, even though I don't. Because they don't see many white people, Italian-looking people from America. And so when I get in these tuk-tuks, these three-wheel auto rickshaws, there's these small little vehicle. It's basically a motorcycle with, a little plastic body on them, right? They're not very safe. And they would take me on these death rides, like they thought I was a thrill seeker. And this guy said, I had to go to the bank quickly. And there was a mountainous road, it was raining, and we were sliding all over the fucking road. And he couldn't understand a word I was saying. And I was under so much pressure and stress. And I was like, what difference does it make? I just my hands up on the sides of the thing, and I was like, like if I die, like it was like, I've got no control. It's like I was spinning, I was spiraling. I'm like, what the fuck? Who cares? Like, what difference does it make, right? But, you know, these gatherings and the ashrams and the sittings is what got me through all this stuff. And, you know, me leaving the organization and not having access to that. And after some time, I told lots of people about Heartfulness, and they were doing it, you know, for the channel. And when I finally figured out that Dodgy had just fucking imploded and gone full cult leader, I made a series of videos, and I put them on Facebook, and a bunch of people from the mission watched them. I called him a little bitch, you know, which didn't go over too well. People were calling for my assassination in India and things, you know, but I mean, it was everything to me in a way, but you know, it had been contaminated. And I had told people on the channel about it, and they were doing it, so I had to explain what I was doing. And, you know, I said kind of like I left Heartfulness, but really what it was is Dodgy took a pure spiritual organization and corrupted it in an idiotic way. And, you know, these people who all kind of knew that what he was doing was so much, and he was shitting all over Chargy, his former, you know, his master. He was Chargy's disciple. And he was shitting all over Chargy every chance he got, saying things about him and how he had failed. I mean, things that you would never see in the master-disciple relationship. The disciple always talks positively about the master, but Dodgy was like a total piece of shit. I mean, he's a real C-word, just a, you know, little bitch about the whole thing, just really bad. And getting into corruption, and, you know, they embezzled money. His son they had taken his pharmacy during COVID, and they got investor money to create an online pharmacy. And his son got $170 million for Dodgy's 7 chains of pharmacy, and they partnered with other pharmacies. And they got $170 million of investor money. And they lied about it. So they're under SEC investigation. Like all these things, all this corruption, right? Just, you know, obvious failure. Everything that Chargy and the other masters of the system weren't, right? And, you know, as painful as it was for me to come to that realization, I came to it. And, you know, there was this woman, when Chargy was alive, people just would do anything to spend time with him. And Chargy was very much a people person. He made himself available as much as possible. But there were times he needed to rest, he needed quiet time. And so there was, you know, volunteer security. A bunch of people my age, for some of my friends, like in the mission, were in charge of security. And I would volunteer, like I would do it sometimes if they needed somebody to fill in. Like everyone had to do a volunteer job at a gathering. Like I made the coffee back when I was drinking coffee. I'd get up at 4 a.m. and drink coffee, make the coffee, and then I'd go meditate. And it was cool. It was like I was all done for the day, you know, so I could just participate in whatever's going on. And sometimes I would do these security shifts. And at the end of the gathering, they had left Master Chargy's door unattended. And there was a guy there. He quit, you know, a couple years later. He was a doctor, a young doctor. He was an American guy. And he had his kid, and he had done security. And he looked at me and said, "This is really bad." And all these people had gone to this room next to where Chargy was eating lunch. And we had just had this great gathering. Like, everyone was filled with this spiritual energy. It was just positive. It was an upbeat vibe. I looked in, and these people had just bum rushed the door. And Chargy had this between with his office and this room they were in. There was the top of the door. It was like one of those Mr. Ed barn doors where the top of the door could be closed and the bottom of the door could be closed and the top of the door could be open, right? And the top of the door was open, and I kind of pushed my way through, and I looked at him. I mean, he's in his 70s, and, you know, I look at him, and he's always upbeat, and, you know, he's just defeated, right? Like after giving all these people, and they just bum rush his door, like it was just, you know, he was big into discipline and things. And so I felt really bad. Like I looked at him, I felt sad, you know, I felt, wow, this sucks for him. And, you know, I felt bad. And these people were just like fucking, you know, Babaji had called these people bloodsuckers who would suck this transmission off of the master when he wasn't prepared to give it, right? It would drain his life energy. You know, they would meditate when he wasn't ready to give a sitting and these things. You know, sitting is where he transmits to the people. And I said, you know, Master, is it okay if I close this door? And he said, looked at me, and his eyes were so fucking sad. He said, please. I closed the door, and I looked at these fucking people, and they were all just so fucking icky, like the worst kind of, like, Justin Bieber fans. These are supposed to be spiritual people. higher developed spiritual people. And there's this one woman, an Indian woman. She was overweight and she was really obnoxious. She used to give these talks. Like one time she said she was giving a sitting. She was a preceptor. And the transmission, which is infinite, it's infinite, God's infinite love. And she goes, the transmission was so great, I want to keep it all for myself. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you want to keep all of God's infinite love to yourself? Like I did really dislike this woman. And she, one time Chargy left and she was in the same room and she was weeping. And she got lots of time with Chargy. Her husband was rich. They donated a lot of money. They built an ashram in Ohio. And this woman was just, she was loud and just needy and just all these things. Someone I, just didn't like. And then had no respect for her back then. But when Chargy would leave, she would weep, right? And so, I broke free from this whole thing, and some guy called me. And he was a little bit of a truther. He had sold dehydrated foods, and we had a few conversation. And he knew about me, and he had watched some of my videos. He found out about my channel. And he contacted me, and he'd gone to the ashram, and he said and he was a Trump supporter at the time. This was back in 2016 or 17, and all these people were liberal, and they were freaking out about Trump. And he said this woman who used to weep when Chargy left, and now this guy Dodgy was shitting all over Chargy, and she was talking shit about Chargy. And, she had completely turned on him, even though she claimed to love him, and she would make a big emotional display. And all these people, I have no respect for. This is where something wonderful, a wonderful spiritual system that had helped so many of us, has been turned into a shitty fucking dumbass cult with a dumbass leader and a bunch of morons around him. I mean, it's just so bad and low vibrational. And they took something wonderful and just wrecked it, right? And these people just all have taken it, either gone along with it, and, all the things that happen. You see this with the person who has a, wife that cheats on him, like I said earlier, or an abusive husband that beats the shit out of him. And they keep on going back to the guy and they talk about how great he is when he's an obvious piece of shit, right? And I have no respect for that. I've seen it with my own thing, and I see it here in Christianity. I see it with Trump. I saw it with Biden. And it's one of the things I have zero respect for. I understand about denial. I understand about painful. It took me a couple of years to fully see what I could have seen earlier with Dodgy, right? We have to all go through our whatever it is. But you have to go through it. At some point, you have to get to the fucking truth, right? And so, it's right in your fucking face. And I'm over the whole thing. I'm over people's feelings. I'm over people's bullshit. But I'm telling you the truth here. But if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's not my problem, right? If you're a Christian or you're a Charlie Kirk person or you're a Trump person or any of these things, you're willfully ignoring the truth, right? And so, not that I'm the barometer of truth, but I've gone through this. And this is another person. Are you dead inside, soulless being? Are you dead inside, soulless being? That's what she's accusing me of. Unfellowed Charlie Kirk died as a martyr. He's alive in heaven right now, and he's more alive than you. He is? Is he in heaven, or is he at Epstein's Island? So many are turning to Jesus Christ right now, especially during these dark, evil times. I'm done with this conspiracy theory about Charlie Kirk people will do anything for creator content over a person who was murdered. Heart, shame on you. Repent now. So this is the kind of dopes that show up on my channel now occasionally. And somebody wrote underneath this has to be a joke, right? And it wasn't a joke. So the person doubled down on it. It's hard to have hope. Like I said, we don't know how people are going to act. We don't know how we're going to act when the system collapses. And this other person wrote, Paul, for someone, this is mounting evidence of mounting evidence of fake in Charlie Kirk operation. That title's fucked. Tucker is a big winner. Paul, for someone with such a peaceful practice And with such mastery over meditation and the spiritual, you sure don't sound very happy. You know, I am happy. I mean, for me, like I said, I went through that thing. I feel pretty good every day. And I enjoy doing what I do here. But, you know, it's depressing. It's not that I get depressed, but, you know, it's not good news. You know, there's not a lot of good things. We're not going in the right direction. I think everybody sees that. There's spiritual potential. Like I said, I'm not sure what people are going to do when the system collapses. But this person is writing this as a way to try to undermine my confidence. Like, people say things that they hope that you're going to dwell on and be miserable about, right? That somehow it's going to get in your, you know, living rent-free in your head. You know, it's like a manipulative, weak piece of shit thing to do. And so many comments I get, and I've banned so many people, but even more so on the internet, I don't get as many as other people, where they try to mess with you psychologically. You know, I told that first comment that I saw, and it didn't bother me, and that's when I knew that I could do this work, because, you know, these people who try to, you know, get in your head and try to psych you out or whatever. But some guy wrote, so my channel was originally about my family and I being on a homestead, you know, that's with the intergenerational family farm, and documenting all that. And the person said, you know, I watched your channel from the very beginning. You know, so my channel started in 2007. In 2000, and, you know, over time I covered truther stuff, but not really. It wasn't a job. It was a hobby. I made maybe sometimes one video a month, two a month. You know, I made a little bit of money. You know, I had, you know, 1,000 subscribers, but then my channel took off in 2014. And he said, you know, I watched your channel when you were homesteading, and now I really enjoy watching you break down mentally. So he's trying to undermine me as some crazy conspiracy theorist. But I've really enjoyed you break down mentally. My only concern is for your poor children. You know, like trying to, you know, I mean, undermine my confidence. And I got a number of these comments where people would, you know, say these things in a way that they'd hope that I'd get mad at them or dwell at them or create self-doubt. And what this person is saying is, you're meditating all the time and you're such a great meditator and spiritual person, you know, in a mocking way, right? Because you can't hear the tone of the voice, but this is what's implied. But if you're such a great spiritual person and you're doing this great meditation, then why are you such a miserable fuck? And trying to get me to, you know, question my spirituality and my mental health or my happiness and these things. But, you know, in reality, I am happy. But if I wasn't, that doesn't reflect on the meditation. Well, first of all, you didn't know how miserable I was before. When people look at me, they wouldn't say I was happy because I'm not all smiley and jolly and I'm not friendly. But I feel good inside. Like I feel, you know, despite all this shit that I see and all these things, you know, I've never felt better. But happiness is not the goal. You know, that implies a superficial idea that happiness, which is a materialistic, you know, happiness doesn't exist in the spiritual world. It's a condition of the body. It's a reflection of pleasure and it's a two sides of the coin with pain. Like you have to have misery to be happy. You have to be sad to be happy, right? You have to have these other things. You have sadness and misery and pain, and then on the other side of that is pleasure and happiness and joy, these things, right? But those things are just part of a binary system that exists here on planet Earth. The principle behind meditation is to connect with God and to get a big dose of spiritual reality beyond the illusion, the Maya of planet Earth. That you penetrate beyond your superficial, egotistical perception and you dive deep into your innermost core where you connect with God and you see reality from the objective standpoint of the divinity within you. And so truth in its unadulterated, purest form. And happiness isn't a part of that. There are spiritual points in the human system where saints, spiritual people would reach that level. And the spiritual points are so blissful. The person is ecstatic. They're feeling pleasure and joy all the time. But what happens is they stop trying to work forward, right? And one of the things about being a spiritual person and being on a spiritual journey is that you have to have miseries and you have to have restlessness. Restlessness is a key that makes you move forward. And it's a part of the system. It's built into the Sizemore system that there has to be restlessness. There has to be something that makes you get out of your comfort zone. But anyways, this is what I'm dealing with. I think that's enough for today. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.